A celebrity doctor by profession, an impeccable motivational speaker, and internationally acclaimed author on books on self-help, healing, spirituality, alternate medicines. Someone who knows how to bridge the gap between the parallel world of the unknown and this real world as we call it by practicing ancient wisdom and combining it with modern science. We are in conversation with none other than Dr. Deepak Chopra. Hello, Doctor.
Nice to meet you.
Same here. It's an honor to have you here. Well, Doctor, coming from a scientific background, how difficult is it to have conviction in holistic approach to healing and alternate therapies?
Well, I think slowly we are changing our view of alternative therapies and beginning to call them integrated therapies because you still need modern technologies for acute illnesses. If you have pneumonia, you certainly need an antibiotic. You break your leg, you need to see an orthopedic surgeon. But at the same time, I think modern medicine is realizing that the technological approach to healing is very incomplete because you basically cover up the symptoms, not getting at the underlying cause of illness. So with antibiotics, you interfere with the mechanism by which, say, bacteria replicate. Or with chemotherapy, you go after a cancer cell and how it replicates. But unless you look at the deeper causes of illness, which have to do with how we live our lives, and physiological processes, eating, breathing, digestion, metabolism, elimination, the world of sensory experience, our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions, our memories, our desires, our imagination, our personal relationships, our social interactions, our environment, they all influence the way our body responds to illness and our body recuperates from illness. So I think at this moment, there's nothing unscientific about an integrative or alternative approach because healing, as the very word implies, healing, wholeness, holy, health, healing, it means healing is the return of the memory of wholeness. It has to be physical, emotional, psychological, intellectual, spiritual, environmental, and so on.
Great. So, did you always have this conviction or it developed much later in life?
No, my training in medicine was in the field of neuroendocrinology, which is the understanding of hormones and brain chemistry. So I was seeing the connection between what happens in consciousness and what happens in biology. So wherever your emotional states, your states of consciousness, your thoughts create very specific molecules. These molecules are called neuropeptides because you find them in the brain. They're peptides or protein molecules. And your immune cells have receptors to these neuropeptides. So your immune cells, which protect you from things like cancer, infection, other illnesses, they're actually, in a sense, listening to your internal dialogue. They're eavesdropping on what's happening in your consciousness. So that was one thing that influenced me. And the other thing was that as a practicing physician, anyone will tell you that you can have two patients who have the same illness, who see the same physician, they get the same treatment, but they can have completely different outcomes. So one patient can recover, the other patient can die. That's the whole problem. You see, if you treat the physical body as a physical machine, then you can't explain it. But when you understand that the physical body is a process, and a process in your own consciousness, then of course it's a whole different paradigm, it's a whole different framework. You begin to understand that agents, like pathogens or bacteria or carcinogens or whatever, are not the causes of illness. They are the precipitating factors in a susceptible host. So what makes a host susceptible? Anything that increases anxiety or stress or enhances the experience of the separate self. So now we know that people who are stressed, who are anxious, who feel alienated, who have resentments, anger, guilt, depression, they are more susceptible to illness given the same challenge. On the other hand, people who have attributes like loving kindness and love and compassion, equanimity, they have a different biology altogether. So your biology is different in different states of consciousness.
Oh, I see. So is it just related to this life, or does it get passed on?
It can be related to, because your consciousness, which is your core consciousness, which in spiritual traditions is called the soul, for example, or Jivatman, because that part of you is not necessarily squeezed into the volume of this body or the span of this lifetime, because it transcends limitations in space-time. Illnesses can have their roots beyond a single lifetime. What, again, one calls karmic causes of illnesses. But karma, not as, I'm guilty about this, but karma is, influences of the past having impact on the present. And the past can, of course, go beyond a single lifetime, since your soul transcends the limitations of space-time.
They do say that once your karmic release happens, there is healing that takes place.
Correct.
So,
Karmic release leads to more flexibility in consciousness and also leads to more creativity in consciousness. And in many ways, healing is biological creativity. I look at healing as a creative response of your biology. But if you have karmic limitations, or what is called karmic bondage, which is the same thing as conditioned responses in biology, then of course it limits.
It does limit.
It does limit the healing response.
Tell me something, does the healer need to be physically fit also to be able to heal others?
A healer must be physically, emotionally, and spiritually fit, because there's a phenomenon that occurs between the patient and the healer. And we now understand what that phenomenon is. It's called limbic resonance. So there's a part of your brain called the limbic brain, which is about 100 million years old in evolutionary time. So you have a reptilian brain, you have a limbic brain, and you have a cortical brain. The limbic brain is one that controls autonomic function. It also influences hormones. It also influences self-repair mechanisms or homeostasis.
Is that just in human beings or all living organisms?
In all mammals. In all mammals. So any mammal will have a limbic brain. Now the limbic brain, whilst it's influencing this part of your body, it also monitors external environments, particularly the emotional milieu. So, if I'm in a room and there are a lot of angry people in the room, then my limbic brain will pick that up, even though I'm not conscious of it. And because the angry people...
Where does that get stored?
No, the limbic brain resonates with other people's limbic brain. So my limbic brain is now monitoring and being influenced by and influencing your limbic brain and all the people, including the crew of the camera crew. And if there were dogs and cats, they too.
They too.
So we monitor each other's emotions. We monitor each other's physiological states. So if somebody in this room becomes emotionally upset, their blood pressure goes up, then mine will go up too. We are totally dependent on each other, on our physiological responses and our emotional states. In Buddhism they say we are inter-beings that inter-arise in the inter-isness. So there is no separate self. This is so important, because if a healer is not physically or emotionally fit, then they'll transfer their imbalance to the one who's being healed, to the subject.
So there is no possibility of a healer being bedridden and transferring healing energies?
Well, sometimes they do. Sometimes they do. But true healing, to be permanent, it involves three processes. Limbic resonance, which means you tune in. Limbic revision, which means you start to revise and regulate the person's physiology. So it's limbic resonance, limbic regulation, and limbic revision, which means you actually change their neural networks. It's a very precise biological response. Now, somebody can be bedridden, but if they are emotionally and spiritually tuned in, even if they are paralyzed,
healing.
then they can heal.
They can heal.
Yeah, I think it's more important to be emotionally and spiritually balanced than to be physically. Now, of course, all three go together.
Yeah.
But somebody could be physically paralyzed as a result of an accident and still be totally grounded emotionally and spiritually.
Oh, is it? Wow. So, I mean, it's not something. I just wanted to know: do doctors make the best healers in the world, or
generally doctors don't make the best healers in the world because doctors are like technicians. They know how to fix a machine.
Okay.
And the physical body is not a machine. It's a process, and it's a very intelligent process. The human body has 100 trillion cells, which is more than all the stars in the Milky Way galaxy.
Absolutely.
Each cell performs 100,000 activities per second, and every cell tracks the activity of every other cell. So how does the human body think thoughts and play a piano and kill germs and remove toxins and make a baby all at the same time while it's tracking the movement of stars and planets? Because your biological rhythms are the symphony of the whole universe. So, they say yatha pinde tatha brahmande. Your body is a microcosm in the whole universe. To be a healer is to be trained or tuned into this wholeness, which we call Brahmand, which is the expression of course, a deeper level of consciousness.
Doctor, tell us, can people with just purity of heart and clarity of intention be good healers? Is there a bracket or a benchmark to be a good healer? And to know that, we'll come to you right after this break. Well, now we're going to hear from the doctor what he has to say.
Your question is, if somebody has a purity of intention, pure heart, can they be a good healer? I think it really helps to have purity of intention. In the Vedic tradition, there's a word called sankalp. Sankalp is a very faint intention, and it's at the cusp of what you might call choiceless awareness or pure consciousness, and at the level of thought. So between the junction point, between pure consciousness, which is Atman, and thought, which is the level of the ego and the intellect, in between is this little faint intention called sankalp. If you can go beyond the ego, if you can become detached from the outcome, if you can release the intention in that pure consciousness, then you don't have to handle the details. The details take care of themselves because you're grounded in the field of consciousness, which has a phenomenon called non-local correlation, which means everything is connected to everything else, everything is related to everything else, and there's pure creativity at that level of consciousness. So the answer to your question is yes, purity of intention, an open heart, love, compassion, kindness, equanimity, peace of mind are all a very necessary ingredient for healing. The less drama, the better.
Great. And when we talk of healing therapies such as Reiki or pranic healing, theta healing and psychic healing, which one do you think has proven to be most effective?
I think all of them are effective, and people respond differently to different types of therapies.
Okay.
I have to say that some of the attention that is given to these therapies as the only way to heal someone is in a sense based on an incomplete idea of the complexity of our biologies and the complexity of response to healing. For me, the original Ayurvedic therapies combined with yoga are probably the most profound. And yoga, not just the yoga postures, the hatha yoga or pranayama components, but yoga in the true sense, Raj yoga, karma yoga, bhakti yoga, Gyan Yoga, which takes you to a deeper level of consciousness. And then combined with that, we have in Ayurveda a lot of very interesting therapies, how to modulate human consciousness through sound, through mantra, through music or Gandharva Veda, through other sensory modulations, through touch, through aromatherapy, through different types of food, where actually foods become medicine, through panchakarma, which is removing of toxins from the body, through emotional healing, which is getting rid of emotional toxicity, through karmic healing. So, you want a complete system, it's all there. Reiki, energy therapies, they are partial approaches and in a sense reductionistic, because they're partial, they're not complete.
So what form of love healing can actually do spiritual healing as well?
Well, love is a very profound healing energy and requires three very basic expressions of love. The first is deep listening. If you really love, you're a good listener. You listen not only with your mind, but with your heart, with your soul. You are a good observer. That's the first expression of love. The second expression of love is compassion or caring, because unless you deeply, deeply care for the person that you heal or the one you want to heal, then that same resonance that I was talking about is not possible. There has to be a vibratory alignment.
How do you practice detachment at this point of time and yet heal then?
Because compassion has to come with detachment. If it doesn't come with detachment, it's not compassion. Then it's more about your own attachment to your success. You see,
but how
very
do you
frequently
strike this
people.
balance?
There's no balance. Love always requires detachment. Because as long as your love is with attachment, it's not love, it's about you. And the third is you actually transfer your love into the other person's biology through intention, as you said.
But how does love work at healing physical problems?
Because love restores what we call homeostasis. Homeostasis is self-repair mechanisms. So when a baby is born, unless the baby is congenitally malformed, a healthy baby, its homeostatic mechanisms, which means its self-repair mechanisms, are not developed. They're immature. And in the first year of life, they slowly start to mature through the experience of love. A mother's love or the parent's love, particularly a mother's love, starts to mature these self-repair mechanisms. So by the time you're 2 or 3 years, homeostasis is stabilized, which means the self-repair mechanisms are stabilized. It's like a thermostat. Thermostat is, if you increase the temperature, it brings the temperature down. If you decrease, it regulates the temperature. Like that, there are many feedback loops in your body: hormone levels, body temperature regulation, immune function, blood pressure, and so on. If a baby is not loved in the first 3 years of life or suffers from the deprivation of love, then that baby will be unhealthy as an adult.
Unhealthy as in physically unhealthy?
Physically unhealthy and of course emotionally unhealthy. The two are linked.
Is there a limit to the miracles that can happen with the world of spirituality and if you practice alternate therapies?
Theoretically, there's no limit, but in practical experience, there seems to be very variable responses. Why some people do extremely well and other people don't do well at all depends on so many factors which you may or may not be aware of. So the patient's diet, the patient's anxieties, the patient's relationships, the patient's previous emotional toxicity, they all influence the outcome. If you can take somebody to a place which is totally beyond fear, which means no fear even of death, then your chances are pretty good of healing, because fear is what limits the biological response.
Does it matter how much surrendering is the subject doing to the healer? Does the subject has to completely surrender, or is it good enough for a healer to be very powerful?
No, the subject has to surrender to mystery, to love, to lack of any emotional attachment to outcome. All of that is very
And have
important.
complete conviction in the healer. Is that important? Or even half-hearted
Conviction in the
subjects do
healer is
get
very
results?
important. Is very important.
It's very important.
Because any kind of doubt will interfere with the healing response. It's complicated. It's not a linear response. Healing is never linear.
What exactly is the relationship of quantum mechanics to the process of healing?
I think with quantum physics, we're getting a better idea of the human body as a field of energy and information. So when you say quantum healing, you're looking at a very deep level of consciousness where consciousness, information and energy fields come together. So on one level, your body is a structure. It's physical, it's hard, it's solid. At another level, it's an energy field.
Yeah.
At another level, it's an information field. And at the final level, it's a consciousness field. Quantum healing is the cusp of the consciousness field and the information field. Because
Okay.
any
But
psychological...
can it be quantified at all?
Well, you can see that if somebody tells you the stock market collapsed and all your retirement fund is in the market,
Right.
that little bit of information immediately causes biological response, right?
Absolutely.
Little bit of information. Or somebody tells you your husband or your wife is having an affair, and you suddenly hear that, and it causes an immediate biological response. So any information, whether it's given to you as information that's emotional to you, or information in the form of sound or touch or sight or taste or smell. You know, food has information. Bitter, salt, pungent, astringent, salt, sweet, they all have different effects on your biology. So quantum healing is just the idea that what information do I need to put into this informational system in order to bring about self-repair.
You'd mentioned in one of your interviews that a mythical sense in you can bring about spiritual healing. I mean, could you just elaborate that a bit if it's
The
possible?
word myth, the word mata, matrika, matter, meter, music, measurement, maya, they're all the same word.
All M's.
All M's, but they're all the same word. Myth is an attempt by the human imagination to quantify the infinite, which can't be quantified, of course. But it's a highest level of expression. So when you say Mahalakshmi, that is a symbolic, mythical expression of abundance. When you say Mahasaraswati, that's a symbolic, mythical expression of wisdom and knowledge, etc., etc.
Sure. What's the correlation with spirituality
The
at
correlation with spirituality is that mythical symbols, when properly invoked, you see, in some of the rituals in India, when they were done properly, you invoked the gods and goddesses. You didn't pray to them. Praying means it's somebody out there. Invoking means invoking the energy
Literally
into your own
calling.
consciousness.
Okay.
Okay, when you invoke that consciousness, that energy in your own consciousness at the level of dhyan, dharana and samadhi, then that symbolic expression of this mythical collective intelligence, it seeps into your biology and brings about a creative response that is resonant with what that particular mythical symbol represents.
So is it the possibility of imagining something larger than yourself that brings about a spiritual change in you or healing? So we come back to this question right after this break. Hello, we're in conversation with Dr. Deepak Chopra, and we are back with a question about being larger than life, and does it cause healing at some level? That's what we were talking about.
Yes, your biology is different in different states of consciousness. For example, when you're asleep, you have a certain biology. When you're dreaming, you have a certain biology. When you're awake, your biology is different. Now, as we go into deeper realms of consciousness, beyond waking, dreaming, and sleeping, you have what is called turiya, or transcendental consciousness, or soul consciousness. Beyond that, something called Turiya Tattva, which is cosmic consciousness. Beyond that, God consciousness, divine consciousness. Beyond that, Brahman consciousness. So as you travel through these different domains of consciousness, and you spoke about mythical entities. The mythical entities are in that domain of consciousness which is called cosmic consciousness. And these mythical entities are basically your own higher self. So when you access this higher self, it has different expressions.
So they're not external beings exactly.
No, I mean, when you say Ganesh, Ganesh is a symbolic expression of many things that is actually explained just in the iconography of Ganesh. He has a big head because he's introspective, big ears because he's a good listener, he's a tusk which is powerful. The tusk can pick a needle in a haystack and uproot a tree. There's a leg in the ground, which is the absolute, leg in the air, which is the relative. There's a rat there reminding him of greed. There's his belt, which is the ego. So every aspect of that icon is actually a symbolic representation of a state of consciousness that you can get into it. And when you can get into that state of consciousness, then you become the remover of obstacles. Similarly, Lakshmi is not some goddess or deity out there. It's a state of energy and information that allows you to create abundance in your life.
Right.
And so the true understanding of mythology really is the understanding of how do you reach these states of consciousness through dhyan, dharana and samadhi, which is so elegantly explained in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, that you actually become a siddha, which means you are able to have siddhis, which in plain English means awakening of dormant potentials that you already had. An embryo has the dormant potential of a human being. A human being has the dormant potential of gods and goddesses.
Gods and goddesses. So can this spiritual healing help you at a physical, mental, social?
There are no physical solutions to any problem. Ultimately, there are no emotional solutions to any problems. There are no mental solutions to any problems. There are only spiritual solutions.
They're only spiritual. You've written a book called Ageless Body and Timeless Mind. I mean, literally taking the meaning of it, can a body be ageless?
Mine is.
Yours is.
Yeah.
Are we talking about the soul being ageless here or a physical body?
No, we are actually talking about the body, and we're talking about the body's biological response to the passage of time. So just like you metabolize food, you metabolize your experience of time. If your attention is always on time running out, your biology speeds up. And people who say, I'm running out of time, their heart rate is faster, their blood pressure is higher, they have jittery platelets. If they suddenly drop dead of a heart attack, then they've literally run out of time. On the other hand, if your attention is on the timeless, the infinite, then your biology responds differently. And when I say ageless body, timeless mind, I actually mean it literally, that your blood pressure, your bone density, your body temperature regulation, your skin thickness, the amount of wrinkles in your skin, your immune function, your sex hormone levels, your hearing, your vision, all these can be reversed.
They can be
reversed. I mean that, yeah.
Like absolutely reversed.
Yeah, mine are.
Wow.
And I'm not kidding. Okay, I'm not kidding with you right now.
Not at all. You had mentioned once that the source of all creation is pure consciousness. And if you were to talk in a layman's language, can you define pure consciousness?
Pure consciousness is the ground of being. It's your essential state. It's who you are. It's that part of you that transcends space-time and the limitations of birth and death. It's what recycles as the mind, as the body, and as ultimately the whole universe is recycling itself. So your body is recycling once a year. Your stomach cells recycle every 5 days. Your skin cells recycle once a month. Your skeleton every 3 months. Your DNA every 6 weeks. So the body that you're using right now to speak to me is not the body you had last year or the year before. And yet there's something about you that is outlasting the recycling of the body. That's your consciousness.
That's
Now,
the
that
consciousness.
consciousness expresses itself as your thoughts, your feelings, your memories, your perceptions, your imagination. But where does that come from? That comes from a base consciousness, which is the ground of your being, which we call pure consciousness. Now, that pure consciousness, which is the ground of your being, is also the ground of the universe. That's why they say Atman is Brahman.
So does that carry forward from all our lives, or does it exist in
That's
our
eternal.
etheric bodies,
That's
casual
eternal.
bodies? It's eternal.
As
Okay. Does it play a
Bhagavad Gita,
strong role
Lord
with the
Krishna
knowledge
says,
body?
oh yeah, that's the part of your body that Krishna says, water cannot wet, wind cannot dry, weapons cannot shatter, fire cannot burn, ancient, unborn, undying. That's way beyond your knowledge body.
So consciousness is something that cannot be transferred. It is purely yours. It's something that
It's
you're born
universal.
with.
It's
It's
universal.
universal.
You have a physical body, you have a subtle body, sthul sharir, sukshma sharir, and then you have a causal body, karan sharir. The karan sharir is the consciousness body, which is beyond your subtle body, your astral body, whatever. And that karan sharir is your jiva, your atman, and brahman.
So they say when you heal a person, you actually transfer energies to the etheric body and not onto the physical body, and that's when effective healing takes place. How
That's
true is
through the
that?
energetic body,
Through
that's
the
the
energetic
physical
body.
body. Physical body is just a projection.
So, I mean, what's the process like? Do you invoke these bodies and do you send in energies? Or
Yeah, you go into the subtle body and then you go into the causal body and then you transfer the energy. But it's actually much simpler than it sounds, It's going to the simplest state of awareness, which is pure samadhi, pure consciousness, having a subtle intention, letting it go.
so do you need the subject sitting right in front of you?
Not necessarily.
Distance healing
You can
does
do
work.
distance healing, remote healing. These are, again, dormant potentials, and they can be understood as non-local phenomena. There's
Non-local.
a non-local, outside of space and time.
So that's still something, I mean, is it measurable, such form of healing?
Non-local
And
healing is measurable. Non-local biological effects are measurable. You can take two people in samadhi, introduce an intention to stay connected, and then you can do evoked responses. You shine a flashlight in one person's eyes. Both brains will respond as if they are connected, even though they are in different locations.
you had mentioned there are three components of purposes in life, which is serving other human beings and knowing God and also expressing your innate talent. So are you able to strike a perfect balance between all three?
I don't think about it, but I think I do, yeah. I mean, I don't give it too much thought. I think the best thing is to be totally natural and not try to pretend to have these connections. It happens by itself as a part of our evolution.
Is there a perfect ratio to strike all these three, or one
Three
can be in
things,
abundance
there are
to the
three
other?
good words: seva, simran, satsang.
Right.
So seva is doing things for people without personal motivation. Satsang is hanging out with the right people. And simran is remembering who you are.
You'd mentioned in your book of Spiritual Laws of Success that there is a purpose and dharma in life. Is it that easy to know one's purpose in life?
I think so. Well, everyone has a unique talent and a unique way of expressing it. So you should ask yourself, I've had all the time in the world, all the money in the world, how do I express myself and how would that make a difference in the world? If you do a bit of reflection, then you will know what your dharma is.
For example, a couple who's just lost their only child, what purpose can they seek out? There's no sense of belonging, and
If you've
they're
lost a
shattered.
child, the best way to help yourself is to take care of other children who are not yours.
So does that come from within, or you really need to seek that meaning and keep finding within yourself?
I think you have to take time to reflect, to be still, to ask meaningful questions. Why am I here? How do I make other people happy? What gives me meaning? What are the qualities I look for in a good relationship? What are the qualities I bring in a good relationship? who are my heroes, heroines in history, mythology, religion, what are my unique skills, talents, how do I help people with them. The more you reflect, the more the answers will come to you. You don't need to look for the answers.
So is it actually coming to terms with destiny?
No, destiny
Is there a
is,
sense of free will, or there's a blueprint and one has to...
if you're karmically bound, then there's a blueprint. If you're karmically free, there's no blueprint.
How would you know that?
Well, if you are constantly influenced by people, situations, circumstances, events, relationships, then you're certainly living in a deterministic universe and karmically bound. If you're independent of the good and bad opinions of the world, and you're constantly looking for creative solutions to every situation and not influenced by what's happening around you, then you're free. Is there free will? Is there determinism? It depends on your state of awareness. If you're in the state of avidya, then there's no free will. If you're in the state of vidya, there's infinite freedom.
Okay. But if there is reasonable amount of spiritual upliftment in one's life, but there are problems like relationship problems with your husband or your children, and that does hinder your spiritual growth somewhere. So how do you know what's your right path? So we come back to this question right after this break. Well, doctor is going to answer this question for us. So doctor.
As I said to you, there's only a spiritual solution to every challenge. So if you're having challenges in relationship, if you're having challenges in economics, if you're having challenges in any area of your life, that's
all can be conquered with spiritual growth?
They are all indications that you're not tuned in.
You're not tuned in. And the only way to probably achieve that is growing, I mean, basically
Seek
going
the highest
within
first.
yourself and seek the highest.
Seek the highest first, everything else is secondary.
So is a person complete in oneself, or is it important that one seeks help at such times?
I think it's important to seek help because, you know, lots of times you're not, you don't have the skills, you don't have the means, you don't have the knowledge, you don't have the technology. It's always good to seek help from people who are professionals in one area or another.
Tell us something about karma. For example, if somebody slaps me, is it because I was destined to be slapped, or is it creating a new karma altogether?
There are three types of karma. There's called prarabdha karma, which comes from a previous lifetime.
Okay.
There's sanchit karma, which is what you've done in the past, in this lifetime. And there's agami karma, which is the karma you're creating by your actions right now. So there are all kinds of karma. Having said that, karma creates the situations, circumstances, and events of your life. What you do with those situations, circumstances, events in your life is up to you.
So the reaction.
It's the reaction. That's an expression of your free will. You know, I was recently with a young boy in New York who's a Hispanic student in Colombia. His name is Julio Diaz, and he was coming out of a subway station, and he was held up at knife point by a thief. And he had to give him all his money, and then as the thief was walking away, he looked at the thief and he said, you look a little chilly, it's cold out there, do you want my coat? And the thief was a little surprised. He turned back and he took his coat off and he gave him the coat. And then he said, you look hungry, do you want to go for dinner? And he took the thief.
Said that?
Yeah, and he took him out for dinner, and then after dinner he said, since you have my wallet, you might as well pay the bill. And and finally he said to him, you know, I believe in karma, so you've got my wallet, what are you going to give me? What's the karmic exchange? And the thief said, I don't know. What should I give you? He said, give me a knife. So he handed him his knife. Now the two of them are in partnership, and they go to the restaurants in New York every evening, and whatever food is left they take and they feed it to homeless people in New York. Wow. So another person with the same situation, with the same karma, would have maybe resisted, would have got a knife in his heart, would have died. This guy would have gone to jail, the other guy would have gone to a hospital. But here's this person who transformed this amazingly, what you would call dangerous incident into an amazing, compassionate outcome that is affecting the lives of thousands of people.
Sure.
So karma creates those circumstances. What you do is dependent on you.
Sure, but how do you explain law, jury, and problems like robbery and stealing, raping? They're like, how do you react to that?
It's all conditioning. Everyone in the world is doing the best they can from their level of consciousness, even the murderer and the rapist. That's all they know. That's how they were conditioned. That's how they were treated.
Are you trying to say the purity of intention does not create a karmic cycle for these people?
I think any karmic cycle can be transcended, and your only response to the worst crime in the world should be one of trying to understand it, be compassionate, and find a creative solution. Because the more you punish people, the more you actually
it comes back?
Recycle the whole process.
Some of your books, like Life After Death, you have usually written in a third-party mode, say such as this was known and this was heard. What's your verdict on a life after death exactly?
Well, your essential consciousness, being non-local, being outside of space and time, is not subject to death. You can't be killed, even though your body can be killed.
Okay.
It's mathematically impossible for your consciousness to die because it's outside of space and time. So I believe that birth and death are actually punctuation points in the continuum of life. The opposite of birth is death, the opposite of death is birth, but life is both birth and death.
Why does it always happen that one has to be in a problem-like situation to seek happiness?
Unfortunately, that's what how people are. They change or look for happiness when they have a crisis or they have a problem or they're confronted with death. It shouldn't have to be like that.
Okay.
But it is like that.
It is like that. Generally, people who pick your books off shelf, are they people who are usually unhappy souls who are seeking for
Not my
meanings?
audience anymore. It used to be that, but now I think, as I've grown in years, people have grown with me over the years. So a lot of people are actually seeking enlightenment without having to face problems. They know there's more to life.
Okay. So what are the new challenges that you look forward to in your life?
I'm more interested in global issues right now. Things like climate chaos, global warming, war, terrorism, poverty, economic disparities, social injustice. My goal now is to harness collective creativity and collective intention, collective compassion to address these big problems because
that's
I don't have
really
personal
mega
challenge.
global.
I don't have.
Well, Doctor, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show. Do you have any message for our viewers, any social message or something on healing? Because the show is about healing yourself.
Well, I think healing is the return of the memory of wholeness, and you can be whole. Just take it easy.
Great. Thanks,
okay,
Doctor,
thank
for
you.
coming.